Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Ezekiel Brown. I'm 20, African American male. I'm from North Chicago, Zion, Illinois. I grew up pretty much. I spent most of my time, my life there. I did spend a little bit of time in Minneapolis and Baraboo.
My name is David Silva Rios. I'm 20 years old. I'm a Hispanic male. I am from Nuevo Leon, Mexico. I was raised in Salt Lake City, Wisconsin.
My name is Doni Caracazoli, and I was born in Tirana, Albania, a small country, close to Italy in Europe on that side of the world. Albania, when I was born, was under the communist regime. So when I grew up, we learned very early to control what we were saying and making sure that we were very politically correct. I went to school, I graduated with a degree in biology in Albania. Then from there, I went to Italy to finish my doctorate. And that for sure was a very different culture, different environment. So I just learned early on that there is a whole different world out there.
How often do you think about race?
I really don't think about race. I don't spend much time thinking about it. But if you ask me on a deeper level, I guess every now and then, because I'm Christian, I'm religious, so I always think about the verse where it says that I'm part of a chosen race. So in that aspect, I do think about it, but in the worldly aspect, not really.
I think about race almost every day, I'd say, like seeing things on social media or thinking about my family.
I have been living in the United States for 20 something years now, which means that I am exposed to all the different behaviors, right, that people have toward different, again, or differently looking people, and especially personally with my accent. And you can find reactions from, just people being very kind and saying, oh, I love your accent, and the extreme reaction, which doesn't, in all fairness, hasn't happened very often, of saying, okay, where are you from? Or, okay, why did you get here? Or something similar to that.
What does race mean to you, or how do you define it?
I actually really don't. I really don't know how I would define race. I feel like it's one of those concepts where it's like, everybody hears about, everybody kind of knows about, but like if somebody were to ask me, I genuinely don't know if I could give a definition of race.
I define race as like how you look and your skin color, your like physical features.
Well, to me, again, looking white, it's about, of course, the accent and definitely the culture, right? As in, how do you approach certain things? How do you, again, talk to people in general and different people? And for the longest time, my dean, my boss, when I started teaching, he will say, oh, don't sit, because in my culture, everybody that comes in, and especially somebody that's older, right, we need to stand up, and it was like very, very automatic to me to do that, right? And then I just realized that it's not a sign of disrespect, not doing that. So again, just little things like that. But overall, again, it's just more about dressing differently or speaking differently.
Has there been a time your race stopped you from doing something?
If anything, I get a lot more opportunities because of my race. There hasn't been a time where I've ever not gotten an opportunity because of my race, but I know there's times where like I've like put emphasis on like my skin color just so like I could get an opportunity, because you're more likely to get an opportunity.
When I would ask to have some sleepovers with my friends growing up, like sometimes they'd ask their parents and they would like give them some like BS excuse of why I couldn't go. Their parents would tell them like the real reason, and it'd get relayed to me, and they wouldn't know what to say, or like I just wouldn't know what to say to them. And
I don't think so. As I said, I've always find people accepting me from who I am and what I can do, but not preventing me from there.
Do you feel seen or represented on a daily basis?
I will say there's never been a time in my life where I haven't felt seen or represented on a daily basis.
I feel like I'm seen just as much as anybody else is, and I shouldn't need any other special attention because I am this certain race or because I am not this or that. I just feel as people should treat everybody equally no matter what they are.
I do. I definitely, I'm seen at school, again, especially at this point when people, know me, and I know students, so I definitely feel like I am appreciated and even loved and supported, by a lot of students. So I'm very grateful for that. Um, mm, Very rarely, as I said, has happened to me that I just don't want to say things just because, again, I think differently of other people. And that's probably the only time then I feel not represented, but mostly it's a personal thing rather than just a institutional thing.
Is there one way that you can think of that your life would change if you were born a different race?
I guess I'll just start with like just like being like fully white, I guess, or like fully Caucasian. Not in a bad way, not in a rude way, but like I feel like my life would get worse. I feel like especially where I grew up in, there's a lot of time where like people use like the racial divide and like obviously stuff that's happened in the past start to like push down white people almost. I feel like you almost inherently have like more of a presence from like having like a skin color. Like, there's all this like worry or like whatever, like, oh my gosh, am I gonna offend this person or like whatever, am I gonna whatever. The mind space of like being white, I think it's just very much like, oh, no offense, but I could care less what this guy thinks. He has no right to speak on this. He's a white privileged person. And my least favorite thing is like the topic and like the idea of race, especially because like when you think about race, it's something that's like so unimportant. And when you talk about ethnicity and nationality and stuff like that, that's a whole different topic. But when you talk about race, I think it's just like been used to make more division nowadays. And I know there's all this stuff that happened in 1900s with civil rights and segregation and all this other stuff. But like things have gotten so much better. And yes, this racism still exists. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of people out there that are racist. There's plenty of people out there that are sexist, whatever. But like that stuff, it's hard to like ever just get that to zero. But like with people doing all this pushing and like DEI and like I think white people have been pushed down a lot, especially in this way. It's almost with talking about it more, especially in the way that we talk about it and go about it, it's almost brought about more divide, in my opinion, than it has like bringing people together. But like when we start to do that, where it's like, oh shoot, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to give back, we have to give back, we have to feel bad, we can't offend black people, any of this stuff, and then they start to push white people down. It's like, why are we doing that
I
divide?
feel like if I were white, I wouldn't get looked at differently when I walk into certain places, like where it's like, say, all white people, and I'm like the only brown person that walks in, and you just get like that stare of like, oh, you look different, or like, oh, why are you here?
As I said, if I were born in the US, I probably would have loved to be a chef. When I was in Albania, right, these professions weren't considered as reputable as going to school and becoming a biologist or a professor. I followed that path, that was kind of carved out for me. But
Have you ever felt like a minority where you lived?
When I lived in Baraboo, it was like I was like young. I didn't even like think about that stuff. Get to Zion, North Chicago. It's like the minority was actually white people. I came to Edgewood. That was the first time when I was like, dang, like I don't see like that many black people. It's like, at that point, like I did feel like I was the minority. There's also like a greater Madison community where we're just like in like a little pocket. That's pretty much, I guess, the only time I would say that I felt like a minority. Every other time, it's just like I just didn't really think or like care that much about like race to be like, you know what, I'm gonna start looking at these people who are carrying myself differently because I'm around different races.
Yeah, I guess I grew up in a trailer park, so always comparing my lifestyle to the people that I went to school with and were friends with who would invite me over or certain things like that. I always feel like a belittled version of them because most people that I were friends with were all well off and had like stable income throughout their whole life for the most part and had little things like, say, a fridge where they could get ice right away, like just put a cup, get ice, get water. That was a whole completely new thing to me. Like I never saw that growing up.
no, not really. Maybe in at the very beginning where my English wasn't that good, and I felt a bit uncomfortable, especially when my kids were little at the playground with my mothers, and not being able to say much to them, just because I couldn't understand or I couldn't say things. But other than that, no, not really.
What is one racial stereotype you've been affected by?
There's a while where like in high school, it was like, dang Zeke, like I really like you. You don't act like black and like you don't act like that black or like any of these other things. That kind of tells me that they've associated like being black with almost like being ghetto or being rude or being ratchet or like any of these other things. So that's probably the only thing I was affected by it because it made me feel alienated from like almost both groups. It's like when I'm around my white family, when I'm around white people, then I started feeling like I had to act this way, like all nice and composed and all these other things. But then when I'm around black people, I can like let loose a little bit more. So that's probably the thing I would say I was affected by, just like the idea of like you being mixed and not black enough or not white enough.
I feel like people always ask me, like, since I'm Hispanic, like, oh, are like your parents illegal, or like, are you illegal? The hard part is like, yeah, I do live up to the stereotype of like a Hispanic being illegal. So it's very hard, like, growing up with my no social security number. I can't get like a regular job that anybody gets. I can't drive without the risk of maybe I get pulled over and maybe I get screwed over something dumb.
Somehow, people think that if you speak with a different accent, then you just don't understand, or you don't get the intricacies of whatever it is that you are saying. So that's probably the only stereotype.
If you could share one message with the younger generation, what would it be?
Don't go around and look for other people just because of the color of their skin. Like instead, look at the content of people's heart, being like, hey, this is a great person. This is the person that shares the same morals, values, ethics that I do. Don't listen so much to what other people around you have to say, and instead find that like pursuit of truth in general. The kids should be raised up in a way where it's okay to look out for people's best interests. I shouldn't feel like it comes in terms of judgment, but people who just don't have the same views or aren't from the same position as I am, like when we can all come together and have those conversations, that's when it's most important.
I would say listen to wisdom when it's shared to you and to never give up so easily.
And work hard and be kind to yourself and trust yourself and your abilities. Never think less of yourself, because there are small setbacks on the way to what you want to do.